I have a communication problem, and honestly, that's probably not too surprising. So I like to know exactly what needs to be said, when I should say it, and how it should be said to have the perfect sentence, the perfect communication. That's not possible. And this caused me a lot of grief in just a lot of different areas, but especially in my ability to maintain close relationships and also within my marriage. Because the problem with this is I don't want you guys falling in the same trap. Because if I want to have the perfect type of communication, then I have to accept the fact that it's never going to exist. It's never going to be perfect. But that's why in today's episode of the Keeping Everything Simple podcast, we're going to talk about how embracing imperfection is the goal to becoming great. Let's dive right in. Welcome back to the Keeping Everything Simple podcast. I'm your host and fellow student, Michael Klukas, and on this show, we boil down complicated topics into simple and actionable tips. Now, first and foremost, I want to emphasize this point is that perfect does not exist. Like, no matter what you think you can do, no matter what you think you've done in the past, the idea of quote-unquote perfect is impossible to attain. Because in of itself, it is recognizing that it's an ideal. It is something that we wish could be true, but perfect in of itself doesn't truly exist. And I say this in the context of especially for solutions to like various problems. Like it's a turn of phrase anymore where we say, oh, I have the perfect solution to this, or hey, that would be perfect to solve this problem right now. But it's still an impossible concept. And that's something that we have to accept, especially for those of us that really, really like having the quote unquote perfect response, perfect solution, perfect plan. It's recognizing that it doesn't actually exist. And that in of itself can both be, there's two reactions to that. One, it can be very freeing. One, you can think, okay, if perfect doesn't exist and it's impossible to attain, that means I have the room to work within the actual reality that I'm in. The inverse of this is where you might take it in the complete opposite direction and say, oh, wow, if perfect doesn't exist, why even try? But what I'm trying to emphasize here is that because perfect doesn't exist, that means you should be okay with an imperfect solution. You should be okay with having imperfections exist. Because if I waited every single time to have like the perfect response to a request from my wife, I would be probably 6 feet under. Namely because it takes forever to formulate the perfect response. It takes forever to think about what's the perfect thing to do. How are you going to make the perfect plan? There's just so many things that you'd have to consider, and that ultimately, if you just made an imperfect plan and refined it, that would be so much better. And real quick, thank you guys so much for watching. And if you are finding any value on this, if you watch this on YouTube, make sure you leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Ring that notification bell so you know every time that we upload a new episode. It really does help us out so much, and I greatly appreciate it. If you're listening to us on Spotify or a podcast app, then make sure you leave us a 5-star rating and give us a follow. That way you know, again, every time I upload a new episode. And it just stokes my ego just a little bit more. But with that, let's jump right back into the podcast. But then, why is it such a problem? How did it become such a problem? And ultimately, I like to think about it like this. Perfectionism is just procrastination with a nicer hat. That sounds stupid, but let me explain. Because the first thought that popped in my head was the idea of the cartoons we used to watch. There used to be the characters that would have to go undercover and they would just throw on a hat, a pair of glasses, and maybe a Groucho Marx mustache. If you know who that is, you know who that is. But then they're just walking around and it's like, oh, suddenly no one recognizes them. And that's how I feel perfectionism kind of exists in our lives, where we think that, okay, if we are going to be perfect, if we're going to make the perfect plan, then we should spend so much time on it. We should spend copious amounts of time, energy, resources on just refining. But the problem is we're going to always be refining because, again, perfect doesn't exist. So what's going to happen here is that you're going to waste a bunch of time, money, resources, energy, mental space, mental capacity, decisions. So decision-making power, because you only have a limited amount that you can have each day. But by the end of it, you're just going to realize, oh, I'm just procrastinating. I'm not making sustainable progress. I'm not making reasonable progress even. I'm just procrastinating by thinking and rethinking and rehashing, and eventually realize it's just procrastination with a nicer hat, because you have a good intention. That's something that I myself at least like to recognize on that fact, is because I want to try to say the perfect thing at the perfect time in the perfect moment. It's because I want it to be impactful. I want it to be helpful, but it's also recognizing that I will get much further in life and in so many other capacities, and especially in my relationships, if I just go with the imperfect. Because if I just wait for the perfect time, that's never going to come, and I'm just going to end up waiting for the rest of my life. And that's not what I want to have happen to you guys. It's not what I want to have happen to myself. So it's recognizing that with perfection and perfectionism, it's just procrastination under a different name and with a nicer hat. So then what exactly can you do? What exactly can we do to overcome this? How do we beat the idea of perfectionism? How do we embrace great instead of perfect? Well, there's two things here. The first one is that you have to get messy. No, I don't mean the soccer player, but if you did get messy, that'd be kind of cool. No, I'm talking about get messy with the process. Get into the nitty gritty details. Sure, that's sometimes fun for people where they really like getting into the finer details of a plan, of something they're going to do, and they're like hashing it out. And that's great. However, you want to still keep the messy process, because if you are, again, trying to just remove as much as possible, trying to get down to what you would think is perfect, then if you keep doing that, you'll never get there. So you have to get to a point where the process might still be messy, but you have to get started, because if you're doing so, you will make more progress by starting messy than you will by trying to wait for perfect. Because perfect is the enemy of great, where you can do something great, you can do something amazing, but you have to start messy. The other part here is get honest. And I mean really honest. For myself, this is a horrible thing that I do, in which I will tell my wife, oh, it's going to take me, half an hour to do this, or it's going to take me only an hour to run this errand, where I'm not factoring in a whole bunch of different, variables, whether it be drive time, whether it be how packed a shopping center might be. And that's landed me in trouble before. Not because I was waiting for perfect, but because I wasn't honest with myself. Because I wasn't honest with how long is this actually going to take me? How long am I going to have to dedicate to this? And how long am I going to make her wait because I misjudged what I could do? So get honest with yourself. Not only about what you can do, but also where you are, what your resources are, how much time you can dedicate towards something, what your current skill level is, because we all love to think about where we can be, of like the top of the top. But then if we forget where we truly are, that's going to lead to a lot more problems than it solves. So if you take that two-headed approach, you start messy, you get into the weeds of the process, but you don't let perfection and waiting for the impossible to stop you from taking action. And then you get honest. Get honest with yourself about where you're at right now, what you can actually do, and how you can do it. Then I believe you can overcome your perfectionism. Where again, perfect is the enemy of great. You guys can be great. You can be amazing. And that's what I want for you, and that's what I believe will happen for you. But you just have to get past the impossible first. So, comment down below. Are you a perfectionist, or do you just feel it's a form of procrastination with a nicer hat? So, if that doesn't work, comment a hat emoji, because, engagement. Yes, I still have my Harris Heller. But with that, keeping everything simple. Have an amazing day, you amazing people. If you watch this on YouTube, make sure you leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Ring the notification bell so you know every time I upload a new episode. If you listen to us on Spotify, another podcast app of choice, make sure you leave us a 5-star rating and give us a follow. So that way it shares the show with other people just like you. I will see you all in the next episode. Make sure you go out there and do great things. See you next time.